All right, O'Neil, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
So, first things first, tell me your name, your company, and your position there.
I'm O'Neil Rudolph, and I'm the CEO of CannaChange.
Perfect. So, what is CannaChange?
So it's an app that allows consumers to return their recyclable and reusable cannabis packaging for points that turn into dispensary credit. And those points are issued by our participating dispensaries that are also found within the app.
That is awesome. What sparked the idea for that?
Well, as a consumer, and especially as a medical consumer where I was just regularly accumulating a lot of waste and it was just really building up, and I knew that like your typical recycling, like it wasn't going to actually go there. Like the majority of it goes to the landfill.
Mhm.
And I felt like there should be a very direct way for consumers to be able to return it. So I had found a few dispensaries like throughout the US every now and then who would like try to start recycling programs, but didn't continue them or like they weren't as successful. And so I guess I was trying to figure out a way to apply that more universally and try to incentivize people as well to actually get that regular participation. And so, yeah, that was kind of what sparked the idea of an app. And I feel like that really involves a lot of people and they give their time and dedication to regularly using an app that they download. So, especially when there's an initiative that they're able to make an impact with and there's an incentive, I felt like that would be the best way to hopefully facilitate that initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's addressing a pretty big problem in the industry. There's a lot of packaging waste going on.
Yeah, definitely far too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell me about your journey with cannabis. What brought you to this point?
Yeah, so I actually got my medical card around, I believe I was like 16. I had been in a really bad car accident, so it was for pain management, and also like struggled with PTSD after that and a few other mental health issues. So that was kind of when I turned to it for medical use and started using it more regularly to really like manage a lot of my symptoms.
Mhm.
And of course, I like became more comfortable with it over time, and have now like learned so much more about it. And I think now just like in itself, it actually really interests me, and it's not just something that I like use as a medicine, but something that separate from that is just really interesting to learn about and an area that I am really excited to work in now and hopefully work in more in the future.
Well, I absolutely second that. It is fascinating to learn about cannabis.
Yeah.
So, building an app is not just something most people walk into. So, what was your professional background like for this?
So I have no professional background for like actually building the app itself.
Okay.
That was something that I had over the course of a few months. Like I'd come up with a design with, like I knew what I wanted it to look like and how I wanted it to function. But in terms of the actual software, like I had no idea how to do any of that. And so that's when I had to start working with a team of backend developers for the actual development of the software.
Awesome. Yeah, it does take a team to create something like that because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, a lot more than I ever even realized. So I'm glad I was able to turn to help for that.
Absolutely. So, now that you've been in the industry for a bit, I know you're rolling out your app. What is something that you're really excited to see going on right now?
I do see a lot more sustainability legislation coming to light, whether it's just being introduced or actually passed. So that's really exciting, even when it's not fully passed in every state yet, especially around cannabis. I think it's just exciting to see the bills introduced and see so much support for them. And a lot of states have already implemented them, so that's always really exciting. And I do see federal legalization in the near future. So hopefully, that'll be coming sooner than later. And that's also something that I'm really excited to see happen.
Absolutely. So, on the flip side of that, what's something going on in the industry that you're not a big fan of?
I mean, I would still say the lack of equity in legislation and the way that it's applied. Like, I think there's been a lot of progress in the conversation about it and about the marginalized communities disproportionately affected, but not a lot of action to actually combat that the way that they're affected. And so that's something I think it's been unfortunate because the energy is there and the drive is there to address it, but it's just still a lot of times put on the back burner.
The energy and drive is there, but there's no follow through.
Yes. Yeah.
So going off of that, how are you in CannaChange pushing for social equity in the cannabis industry?
Well, I think as a Black, like LGBTQ woman founder and owner at the intersection of like tech, cannabis, and sustainability, which are, I mean, already in any like executive position, it's really difficult to navigate that being a member of any marginalized community. But I think specifically in those industries, just especially at the entry point, there's a lot of inequity that people aren't even fully aware of. Even in cannabis, I think there's like a lot of I guess assumptions made about like that it's an equitable and like very diverse industry to be a part of, but there's still a lot of issues there. So I think that my goal is to always be outspoken about those issues and encourage other people to do the same, because I think the only way to get more people like able to be in positions where they are able to like make full decisions for a company and feel like they have the power that they should, especially when it's their own company, and are able to like actually succeed in what they're trying to do is by bringing those issues to light and addressing them directly. And so I just really want to like always be outspoken about that and the obstacles that I run into, and really just build relationships with other people who are willing to have those conversations and bring attention to them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether or not people should be aware of it, they can't do anything about it if they're not aware of it. So those conversations are such an important place to start.
Yeah, definitely a starting point.
Yeah. Got to start somewhere, even though it feels like we just keep starting.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
So in that same vein, talk to me about diversity and inclusion within CannaChange.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I guess like within the company itself, it's really me doing like running almost everything. I think it was really important to me to have the backend developers I was working with also identify as women, because in that field specifically, there's also such a lack of diversity and just exposure for women in tech and like especially developing software. So that was just really important to me. And I felt like it also make the whole process easier for me to navigate, because there would be a mutual understanding of like how difficult that all can be if you're not navigating it with people who have been through similar obstacles. And so I think that was, with that was a really good decision to make. I think that it helped a lot and will continue to in the future. And so when I am looking to expand in other ways, that's also something that I will definitely keep in mind, because that's important to me personally, but I also think it's important for a company to like really have that mission and fully execute everything they do with keeping it in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always easier to put that in at the ground level rather than have to go back and try to put it in somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what I see happening a lot, and it's really working backwards. Yeah.
So obviously sustainability is a really big part of what CannaChange does. Can you talk a little bit just about the cannabis industry and sustainability and how we could be doing better?
Yeah, I mean, I think like another one of my processes going through like developing CannaChange was like initially just why can't we just reduce the amount of packaging? Like that was just my first initial thought. Obviously it's not nearly that simple. So then that's when I started thinking like I did so much research on like how legislation has changed and how many different regulations there are around packaging now in every single different state, and why, even though that seems like the simplest solution, and it's definitely the best, is to simply have less packaging and have all of the packaging that is there be able to be disposed of in a sustainable manner, whether it's composted or recycled or reused. But with all the different regulations in place, it's really not that simple. And we're not just able to minimize the amount of packaging directly or change the material because of like the child-proof packaging, for example, or Mylar bags. And so that was when I had to kind of shift to thinking about what to do with the packaging after it's already produced. And I think that was almost a difficult shift to go through, because I wanted to be able to tackle the simpler solution of like, well, just, we don't need nearly this much. But, that's been, I guess, a consistent argument for a long time. And I think that a lot of packaging restrictions are only getting stricter. And I do hope to see that change to offer more flexibility and an increase in sustainability. But I think for now, the best thing is to focus on what to do with it after it's already produced because there's already so much of it produced and out there.
Mhm. Yeah, if we can't stop it from being produced, what can we do to minimize the harm that it does?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, in building a company, entering the cannabis space as a Black woman, it's not something that is easy. So, if you had to pick one challenge, the biggest challenges you've overcome, what would that be?
I mean, I think it's really, really difficult to get on a business call with like I think also like being very young, it's like I'm a Black woman at the intersection of these three really difficult industries to be a part of. And then I
Mhm.
also get on a call with like a much older straight white man. And that's a very different perception that they would have of me versus someone who identifies very similarly. And so I think it's really hard to get on those calls and expect to I guess have them see your value proposition. Like that's why they reached out. That's why they wanted to schedule a meeting with you and like discuss business. And then to feel completely like everything you're saying is invalidated or like you have to like prove yourself. And I think that they ask a lot of questions that they wouldn't ask a lot of other people, like as if it's not something I would know. And so I think for me it's a constant reminder of like this is your business. Like these aren't other questions that other people can answer. So they're not like right or wrong. You know, like your responses aren't right or wrong. Like it's your business and it's your company that you started and like know the values of. So I think that that's been a good reminder for me to have for myself. But it's definitely difficult with, you know, other people doubting, especially the mission of sustainability and that it's, you know, a stretch that that the industry can be fully sustainable. So I think that also just goes into the older generations as well, and with them being kind of used to sustainability being an issue that's often neglected.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. The older generations are why we're here in the first place, aren't they?
Right. Yeah, that's actually why I started this company.
Exactly. That is definitely challenging, but I think it's awesome that you've been able to find the validation of ownership in that, knowing that what you have to say about your company is the right thing to say,
Yeah,
regardless of what they
exactly.
think. What's something that you're really proud of accomplishing?
I think in general, like actually taking this idea I had and making it something real because I had it for so long, but it just seems like, oh, well, like that's all it is. It's an idea, like it's a thought. It's not something that can be executed or actually created. And I had seen so many people before say or even tell me that like they have all these ideas, they don't execute them, and they see other people execute them. And they're like, they always wish that they had actually taken the idea and done something with it. And then I had somebody who was really important to me and like really mentoring me in a like position in business, I guess, say like your brain is giving you ideas for a reason. Like it's to do something with them. It's not to just like okay, thanks, and then like completely like push them off. Like if they're
Yeah.
persistent, like yeah, your brain wants you to do something, like execute them. And so I think that was a turning point for me because I was like, yeah, I mean, it's not they're not there for nothing.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, you know, I might as well like really throw myself into this and like see what happens. And so I think like letting go of those fears of it not working out, of it being just an idea and nothing more, was a really big thing to overcome and actually have it become, you know, a tangible, solidified thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are always most terrifying before you get started on them.
Yeah.
So when somebody uses your app to recycle their packaging, what kind of experience do you want them to take away from you, from the app? Excuse
Yeah, I think like I mainly want them to feel and know that they did make an impact. I think that one of my goals with allowing people to track their waste within the app was to show them that even if you're returning this one piece of packaging or like this one glass jar, it's building up over time. Like you're building an impact over time, just like it builds an impact over time to not recycle or reuse or compost like any packaging that can be disposed of sustainably. So with all of the negative impact that can have, it can have just as strong of a positive impact on the flip side. So I think that that's something I want people to really take away and realize that we can fully normalize the act of returning this packaging and keeping it within the supply chain in that way. And I hope that that's what people are able to feel when they're using it and know that they actually do have an impact.
I love that you can track everything that you're returning. Because even if you're like, well, I'm only returning, one piece a month, that's 12 pieces a year you save from a landfill.
Exactly. Yeah, it definitely builds up over time.
So I know that you are in the launching phases. Things are crazy. You're testing. You're doing a lot of things right now. But what is next for you?
I think that I have gotten a lot more interest from other sides of the industry than I thought I would, like from on the brand side of the packaging, the actual producers of it, and the companies that are packaging their products but aren't actually
Mm,
distributing them at a dispensary, and then on the cultivation end. So I initially saw this as like a dispensary consumer relationship in the app. Like the consumer goes to the retailer and returns it, and then that's that's I guess the transaction, and those are the parties involved. But I've also heard so much feedback from other sides of the industry for people who are also wanting to increase their sustainability efforts. And so I think that I've been trying to figure out how those can be integrated, or how I can also do something to target those areas, because I think I just wasn't expecting like all of that feedback and support from so many other areas of the industry as well. But of course, I would love to make as big of an impact as possible, and so I'm trying to kind of figure out the best way to offer sustainability initiatives in those areas as well.
that's great. Yeah. I mean, that's got to be really validating to hear from people that you weren't expecting to hear from on the other side of the industry that you're onto something that they're interested in.
Yeah, definitely. It was very exciting. Yeah, I think that they've been looking for something like this, and
Mhm.
with it really pertaining to retailers and consumers, I think now it's just about like figuring out how I can also apply it to them, and yeah, be able to service them with more sustainability measures as well. So yeah, it was definitely exciting.
Yeah, you didn't have that idea for no reason.
Yeah.
So, personally, what is your favorite way to consume?
Definitely smoking, and definitely a bong is always my go-to. I think I've tried to really branch out, but I'm always going back to that.
There is nothing like a nice bong hit. It really just satisfies differently.
Yeah, definitely. There's nothing else like it.
I am also a water pipe kind of girl, so I get that.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So I've so appreciated getting to pick your brain. I have one more question for you, but before I dive into that, is there anything else that you want to touch on or mention while we're here?
I don't think so. I think you touched on mostly everything about the company and kind of my mission with it.
Awesome. So my last question for you today is, what is your favorite fun fact about cannabis?
I guess I don't have one favorite fact. I've been learning a lot about terpenes that like I had obviously heard that word and like kind of knew what they meant, and like
Mhm.
I had no idea how many they were, and that they were also in so many other things, and like how to identify all the different types and like the different effects they all had. So I think once I started diving into that, I was overwhelmed with information, but in a good way, because I was like, oh, this is so fascinating. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited to keep learning more, because I had no idea that it was such a complex topic. So that's
Yeah.
been it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once you start learning about terpenes, it kind of unlocks a new level in your weed to know what you're smelling and to understand how it's going to affect you.
Yeah, I think that's also why I was interested. I saw somebody on LinkedIn talking about how like they went in to a dispensary and they were asking about certain terpenes, and like there was just so many things. Like the bartender was like telling them all these different effects and the different like combinations, and like of course that was something I knew had an effect, but I had no idea how like specific they all were, and all of that. So
This is what happens when we get all hung up on THC and we don't want to talk about anything else.
exactly, yeah.
I love that when I go into a dispensary and I'm like, all right, like I would like, weed obviously, but under 20% THC, preferably with CBD, and it needs to smell like this, or this. And they're like,
Yeah, and then
okay.
yeah, there used to be people just being like, "What's the highest THC content?" Like that's what I'm here for.
Ooh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so great. I'm so glad that we got to sit down and pick your brain and share what you're doing. I think it's awesome. Thank you for your time.
Of course, thank you so much as well. I was really excited for this, and I'm really excited I got to sit down and talk with you.